The gentlelady cannot, as a member of Congress, be standing up and telling the world that what we saw unfold in attacking Israel is justified. We can't.
Mr. Chair, do you know what it's like to fear rising hate crimes, to know how Islamophobia and anti-Semitism makes us all less safe, and worry that your own child might suffer the horrors that 6-year-old Wadia did in Illinois? I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable.
Congress just exploded after Ilhan Omar defended her ceasefire position, and Chip Roy fired back with accusations that stunned the entire room. What started as an emotional speech about Palestinian civilians turned into one of the most brutal clashes we've seen in Congress this year. And once Roy began describing the October 7th attacks in graphic detail, the hearing completely spiraled. This was not a calm policy debate. This was two completely different views of morality crashing headfirst into each other live on camera. One side argued the focus should be on innocent Palestinians dying in Gaza. The other side argued there can be no discussion of ceasefire until Hamas is fully condemned. And the more both sides spoke, the more obvious it became that Congress is deeply divided on this war.
We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. Why? What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. We cannot lose our shared humanity, Mr. Chair. I hear the voices of advocates in Israel, in Palestine, across America, and around the world for peace. I am inspired by the courageous survivors in Israel who have lost loved ones, yet are calling for a ceasefire and the end to violence. I am grateful to the people in the streets for the peace movement, with countless Jewish Americans across the country standing up and lovingly saying, "Not in our name." We will continue to call for a ceasefire, Mr. Chair, for the immediate delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza, for the release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained, and for every American to come home. We will continue to work for a real lasting peace that upholds human rights and dignity of all people, and centers in peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and censures no one, and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear of violence. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censure me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the president to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings. Thank you, and I yield.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Maryland reserves. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
If this was about calling for a ceasefire, we would not have these proceedings. I was wrong, by the way, when I said that it must have taken a long time to find somebody who hadn't voted for censorship from the other side of the aisle. You didn't find it. The gentleman from the other side of the aisle actually did vote for censorship on a First Amendment right. So I find it rather funny. We just researched it, and unless my sources are wrong, the vast majority of the other side of the aisle actually voted for censorship based on a First Amendment right. I wanted to also say that my heart goes out to the Palestinian people. It truly does. Especially those people that were bombed in the hospital, which my colleague knows wasn't from the Israelis. And yet, the statement is contrary to that, even though our intel was very clear, as was our president, very clear. That's what this debate is about. With that, I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Georgia for his time. And with respect to the gentleman from Maryland, I understand the perspectives with respect to free speech. And I certainly wish to always stand aside the protection of free speech in this country. But this goes well beyond that, because we're not talking about restraining the gentlelady from Michigan's ability to speak as an American citizen. We're not talking about punishing her, putting her in jail. What we're talking about is whether a member of the United States House of Representatives, whether a member of this body representing this nation is justified in putting forward a defense of the actions of Hamas terrorists that murdered innocent Israeli citizens, is holding United States citizens and Israelis hostage, and in her own language was defending on October 8th, a mere 24 hours into the brutal and barbaric attacks in which babies were beheaded, babies were placed into ovens. Literally, moms were raped in a house while their babies were put in an oven. A documented account, video evidence. And this is dismissed as resistance to an apartheid state. My problem is that the gentlelady is also referring to, quote, Joe Biden supporting the genocide of the Palestinian people. The gentlelady has put forward that by virtue of the United States of America funding in solidarity the people of Israel in defense of their right to exist, that by virtue of our position as Americans, standing in front of that flag in this chamber representing 330 million Americans, that by funding and supporting Israel, we are somehow perpetuating the call for violence that we saw unfold right before our eyes on October 7th in the most brutal and heinous acts that some of us have ever seen. I do not doubt the gentlelady's sincerity of her concern for her home people and concerns about the attacks on the people of Gaza. I had some people who called into question that I would put out my public support for my former colleague, Justin Amash, who lost cousins in a church, receiving missile fire into a building next to a church. I genuinely pray for the people of Israel, the people of Gaza, the people throughout the world that are now dealing with all of this. But the gentlelady cannot, as a member of Congress, be standing up and telling the world that what we saw unfold in attacking Israel is justified. We can't. Free speech matters. I have grave concern right now about where this institution is going with respect to censures. I voted against the censure last week because I thought it had drafting problems, and I thought it had significant concerns it raised. I believe the work that was done by my friend from Georgia here put forward a resolution that is worthy of support. And so I support the resolution and believe that we should pass it.
The hearing started with Ilhan Omar delivering an emotional defense of her ceasefire stance. She talked about Palestinian civilians suffering in Gaza. She talked about children dying, families living in fear, and rising Islamophobia across America. At one point, she said something that instantly became the center of the debate. The cries of Palestinian children sound no different to me than Israeli children. That was the heart of her message. She argued that calling for peace and humanitarian aid should not be controversial. She pushed for a ceasefire, the release of hostages, and an end to violence on both sides. And politically, she also warned Democrats that many voters are becoming frustrated with Biden's handling of the war. But once Chip Roy got the floor, the entire mood changed. Roy said this debate was no longer just about free speech. He argued it was about whether a member of Congress was defending or minimizing the actions of Hamas after October 7th. And he did not hold back. He described the attacks in horrifying detail. Families murdered, civilians kidnapped, children killed. Roy accused Omar of framing terrorism as resistance, and he argued that America's standing with Israel should not be controversial after what happened. But here's why this hearing became so explosive. Both sides believed they were defending humanity. Omar focused on Palestinian civilians caught in the war and argued that innocent people should not continue suffering. Roy focused on the victims of Hamas and argued that condemning terrorism must come first without hesitation. And neither side backed down even an inch. That is why this exchange hit so hard, because this is no longer just a foreign policy debate. This is becoming a massive political divide inside America itself. Democrats are publicly splitting over the issue. Republicans are treating support for Israel as a clear moral line, and Congress now looks completely fractured on one of the most emotional issues in the world right now. You could feel the anger in the room. You could feel the frustration. And honestly, this fight inside Washington looks like it is only getting bigger from here.